On the 6th day of the 6th month at Fallen Dragon Cliff in the Chen Nation, gray clouds covered the sky while a chilly wind swept through the land. Thousands of wounded soldiers camped there, resembling a defeated army. Many soldiers guarded a large yellow tent situated in the center. Officials filled the large tent, their faces marked with worry as they looked toward a throne at the north end. An old man dressed in imperial robes sat on the throne. He appeared to be about 60 years old, with a pale complexion, and he coughed continuously. Servants carefully attended to the old man, occasionally wiping off the blood he coughed out. A white-clad man who looked to be about 40 stood beside the throne. He placed his hands on the back of the old man, apparently transfusing veritable energy into him to treat his injuries. The old man in imperial robes spat out a mouthful of blood. His treatment had ended, but his condition showed no improvement. Instead, his face grew even paler. The middle-aged man wearing official robes, leader of the group of officials, cried out in startlement at the sight of the old man. The group of officials immediately exclaimed in fear, addressing the old man as their emperor. The old man ignored the officials and instead looked at the white-clad man who was transfusing energy into him. He sighed bitterly, acknowledging that his heart vessels had ruptured and that he had been too careless. The white-clad man sighed in response, chastising the old man, Chen Taiji, for being too greedy for accomplishments and making a premature advance. Chen Taiji explained that he had wanted to attack with full force to gain victory for the sect, but had underestimated the Song Nation's strategist, Gao Xianzi. The white-clad man lamented that the battle between the Chen Nation and the Song Nation carried great implications beyond their understanding. Chen Taiji begged the white-clad man, his third granduncle, to help him kill Gao Xianzi, fearing the Chen Nation's defeat and possible eradication. The white-clad man frowned and shook his head, explaining that an important personage was observing the battle and had ordered them. Chen Taiji coughed out blood again, struggling to accept that they could not intervene. The white-clad man clarified that neither their sect nor the sect behind the Song Nation could interfere, and that Gao Xianzi alone was responsible for Chen Taiji's injuries. Chen Taiji suffered another violent coughing fit. A foot soldier rushed into the tent and knelt on one knee, his expression freezing upon seeing the pale emperor coughing blood. Chen Taiji stared at the foot soldier and demanded a report. The foot soldier anxiously reported that Tong Pass had fallen. Chen Taiji coughed out blood again, shocked by the news. Another foot soldier entered the tent to report that Chengshan Pass had fallen. Yet another foot soldier reported that Jiayu Pass had fallen. The large tent fell silent except for the anxious breathing of the officials and Chen Taiji's persistent coughing. Despite his violent coughs, a rosy color returned to Chen Taiji's pale face. The white-clad man frowned heavily, realizing this was a dying flash and that Chen Taiji was on the verge of death. All the civil and military officers in the tent appeared flustered. The man in official robes exclaimed in horror that with the fall of Tong Pass, Chengshan Pass, and Jiayu Pass, only the plains remained for the Song Nation, meaning 3/4 of the Chen Nation's territory was lost. The white-clad man sighed, admitting that they had lost and that Gao Xianji was genuinely capable, leaving no way for the Chen Nation to retaliate. Chen Taiji's complexion appeared rosy as he described Gao Xianji's godlike usage of the army, feinting in the east and attacking the west, breaking through 3 passes simultaneously and shattering their army's morale. The white-clad man urged Chen Taiji to let the crown prince succeed the throne, noting that the Chen Nation still had Hulao Pass, hoping it could be defended for a while. Chen Taiji resisted coughing as he questioned the white-clad man about the sect master's potential anger toward his son. The white-clad man nodded silently, explaining that an important person was watching the war, and that the sect master valued this personage's opinion greatly, possibly leading to anger directed at Chen Taiji's son. Chen Taiji trembled, uncertainty clouding his eyes as if making a difficult decision. He quavered, insisting that they had not lost yet because Hulao Pass still remained. The white-clad man dismissed Hulao Pass's military might as the weakest, defended only by inexperienced imperial guards, and doubted its ability to hold against the Song Nation's ferocious army. Chen Taiji's expression grew fierce as he repeated that they had not lost. The white-clad man bitterly told Chen Taiji that with the scattered remnants of his army no one could stop the destruction of the nation and advised him to consider begging for forgiveness from the sect master. The crown prince in official robes expressed bitterness, lamenting that the sect was unwilling to interfere. Chen Taiji closed his eyes, trembling all over, before stating that there was one person who could save the desperate situation. The white-clad man stared somewhat blankly, surprised by this assertion. The crown prince also showed a curious expression. Chen Taiji urged the crown prince to go and beg this person, believing that as long as he was willing to help, they could win everything. The white-clad man argued in disbelief that the Chen Nation had nearly lost everything and that no one could save the desperate situation without the sect's interference. Chen Taiji's face flushed red as he insisted that this person could indeed save them. The Crown Prince asked with startled curiosity who this person was. Chen Taiji named Gu Hai with great difficulty, as if deeply rejecting the idea. The Crown Prince asked if old Mr. Gu was the wealthiest man of the 6 nations, feeling shocked. He expressed disbelief at Chen Taiji's bitter smile and coughing fit as he mentioned Gu Hai. The Crown Prince recalled that Gu Hai had only started cultivating after 30 and had poor cultivation talent despite his wishful dreams of joining the sect. Chen Taiji looked at the white-clad man in shock and asked if he knew Gu Hai. The white-clad man confirmed that he had seen Gu Hai before, and explained that most Golden Core realm cultivators of the sect had encountered him, as Gu Hai would quickly find them in the mundane world and attempt to bribe them for induction. The white-clad man noted Gu Hai's poor cultivation talent and late start, making it difficult to find a use for him, and warned that accepting him would make the sect a laughingstock. Chen Taiji admitted that he thought he had suppressed all opportunities for Gu Hai to contact the sects, but acknowledged that Gu Hai had circumvented his precautions long ago, marveling at the hidden. The white-clad man frowned and questioned Chen Taiji's certainty that Gu Hai could save the desperate situation, pointing out that Gu Hai was just an ordinary person with acquired realm cultivation. The Crown Prince anxiously asked if Gu Hai, being just a merchant, could command troops and fight wars. Chen Taiji resolutely declared that Gu Hai was definitely capable and the strongest of great strategists, urging the Crown Prince to lead all officials to beg for his help, even if it meant kneeling. The Crown Prince expressed surprise that a merchant could be the strongest strategist. Chen Taiji implored his third granduncle to fulfill Gu Hai's demands, emphasizing that only Gu Hai could turn the desperate situation around and guaranteeing it on the Crown Prince's life. The white-clad man frowned thoughtfully, recognizing the hopelessness of the situation, but noting Chen Taiji's unwavering faith in Gu Hai, and he turned grave, aware of the war's significant implications. The white-clad man solemnly promised to do his best to satisfy Gu Hai's demands as long as they were reasonable. Chen Taiji weakly instructed the Crown Prince to listen to everything Gu Hai said and to address him as Uncle Gu, noting that Gu Hai was once the Crown Prince's father's sworn brother, before coughing bitterly. The Crown Prince showed a shocked expression upon hearing the title, Uncle Gu. Chen Taiji sorrowfully asked the Crown Prince to apologize to Gu Hai on his behalf, admitting that he had let him down in the past. After this final statement, Chen Taiji closed his eyes, his flushed face paling as he stopped breathing. The officials and attendants inside and outside the large tent fell to their knees, mourning the Emperor's passing. The announcement of the Emperor's death caused everyone to kneel in endless mourning. On the 14th day of the 6th month in ancient Windtown at Hulao Pass, the Gu residence was a mansion surrounded by bustling restaurants and inns filled with many guests. A group of people wearing mourning clothes arrived, halting the bustle as many soldiers guarded the area, injecting a somber and desolate air into the festive atmosphere. Guests on the streets questioned why there were so many soldiers despite it being old Mr. Gu's 70th birthday celebration, and noted that officials would not dare to offend old Mr. Gu, who did not interfere with politics. They recognized the Crown Prince among the mourners, wearing mourning clothes and followed by civil and military officials, which shocked them. The guests realized that the Crown Prince would only wear mourning clothes upon the Emperor's death, and since the Emperor was believed to be leading troops at the front lines with recent victories, their news was outdated, leaving them shocked. Within the Gu residence, while guests wandered the streets and front yard in a festive mood, the backyard was peaceful and serene. A 7-story pagoda called the Soaring Pagoda stood as the tallest building in the residence in town, offering a view of the entire town from its top. Many of the Gu residence's people stood solemnly at the foot of the Soaring Pagoda, watching Crown Prince Chen and the officials in mourning clothes kneeling there with sorrowful expressions. Only Chen Taiji's third granduncle, the white-clad man from the sect, remained standing without kneeling. Crown Prince Chen Liangyi, with a pained and sorrowful expression, sought an audience with Uncle Gu and begged him to take revenge for his imperial father. The Chen nation faced imminent destruction, and Chen Liangyi's future as Crown Prince was uncertain, as the immortal sect backing the nation might take out its anger on him. However, his father had said that Gu Hai could turn the desperate situation around, and was his sworn brother. Chen Liangyi was willing to kneel for 3 days and nights if Gu Hai could save the nation. Many servants of the Gu residence stared wide-eyed, astonished that the Crown Prince and all officials had come to meet their master. The white-clad man, Chen Tianshan of the Clear River sect, called out to Gu Hai, reminding him that the Crown Prince and officials had already knelt before him and asked what more he wanted. The Gu residence's people watched with narrowed eyes as the leader of their group, a broad-faced man in his 30s wearing an azure long-sleeved shirt, stood outside the Soaring Pagoda, commanding. A servant hesitated to suggest something, but the azure-shirted man's cold gaze silenced him immediately, affirming the Gu residence's unchallenged prestige. The first young master ignored the group's opinions and waited patiently outside the soaring pagoda. Crown Prince Chen Liangyi repeated his father's request for revenge and apology to Uncle Gu for past failings. A drawn-out sigh came from within the soaring pagoda, changing everyone's expressions. An aged voice invited immortal venerate Chen and Chen Liangyi to enter, acknowledging the delay and asking Gu Xin to escort them. Gu Xin, the first young master, responded respectfully and opened the pagoda doors, apologizing for the delay and inviting them inside. Chen Tianshan nodded, and Gu Xin respectfully led Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi into the soaring pagoda. The doors creaked closed behind them, while the civil and military officials outside looked on curiously at the pagoda. The pagoda had 7 floors. Chen Tianshan discovered that bookshelves stuffed with countless books filled every floor. Chen Liangyi found the same on each level. Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi continued upward until the 6th floor, where they finally saw Gu Hai. Gu Hai stood by a large go-board placed by the window. He had a head of white hair and a stern expression. Gu Hai was a black-clad old man, about 70 years old or so. He had many wrinkles, but his eyes appeared very clear, as if they could see through one's heart. Chen Liangyi's heart pounded heavily at the sight. Chen Liangyi wondered if this was the richest man of the 6 nations. Gu Hai. Chen Tianshan questioned the man's identity, noting his eyebrows. The old man merely smiled faintly. He explained that he was indeed Gu Hai, but had worn a fake beard and drawn on eyebrows previously to avoid unnecessary trouble. Chen Tianshan looked carefully and confirmed that this person was Gu Hai. The features that left the deepest impression on him before were actually all fake. Chen Tianshan realized that although it was the same person, the appearance had changed significantly. Chen Liangyi knelt again and told Gu Hai that his father had died and that his father had sworn brotherhood with Gu Hai, asking him to help take revenge. Gu Hai narrowed his eyes as he looked at Chen Liangyi. After some silence, Gu Hai said that he had sworn brotherhood with him back then, but that the brotherhood no longer counted because his sworn brother had also tried to kill him. Chen Liangyi's expression froze. Chen Tianshan frowned slightly. Gu Hai looked at Chen Tianshan and said he knew why they were here. He explained that 3 PASSs had fallen, and Gao Xianzhi had trapped and killed 600,000 soldiers at those 3 PASSs. Gu Hai stated that the Song Nation had resolved to destroy the Chen Nation. Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi were left with 100,000 scattered and inexperienced soldiers. Gu Hai questioned whether it was possible to block the 800,000 ferocious soldiers of the Song Nation. Chen Liangyi exclaimed that Gao Xianzhi had killed 600,000 soldiers who were prisoners of war. Gu Hai rebutted indifferently that it had happened at noon 4 days ago. Chen Liangyi asked how Gu Hai knew, but Gu Hai did not answer. The first young master Gu Qin remained at the side, attending to the group. Gu Qin respectfully poured tea for Gu Hai, and then Chen Tianshan. Gu Hai gestured for Chen Tianshan to take a seat. Chen Tianshan looked at Gu Hai, finding this behavior strange. Ordinary people would treat the immortal sect's people like deities, but Gu Hai was calm and indifferent. Chen Tianshan sat down and said sullenly that Chen Taiji had said Gu Hai could do it. Gu Hai picked up his tea and took a sip. He said that under Gao Xianzhi's leadership, it would take the Song Nation's army only half a month to smash the nation to pieces and reach Hulao PSS. Gu Hai noted that Chen Tianshan was even clearer than he was about the quality of the 100,000 soldiers at Hulao PSS. Gu Hai laughed at the idea that this group could resist Gao Xianzhi's ferocious army of 800,000. Gu Hai said that not only would some of Chen Tianshan's people surrender first, but perhaps Gao Xianzhi would not even have to do anything for Hulao PSS to fall. The expressions of Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi changed. Gu Hai did not exaggerate. This was something extremely possible. Chen Liangyi immediately cried out, begging Gu Hai to help save the Chen nation and promising to do anything he wanted. Chen Tianshan chimed in with certainty, asking if Gu Hai had a way. Gu Hai's eyes suddenly lit up as he narrowed them. He questioned why the immortal sect cared so much about the Chen nation but had not made a move personally. Gu Hai imagined that taking the head of the army's leader would not be difficult with their strength. He also noted that the immortal sect controlled more mundane nations than just the Chen nation. Gu Hai wondered why they had not asked the other nations for help, but had come to him, a money-grubbing old man, instead. Chen Tianshan frowned slightly. After some silence, he replied that only these 2 nations were permitted to fight. The other nations could not assist. Chen Tianshan added that the people of the sect were not permitted to interfere either. Gu Hai's expression immediately changed, his eyes glinting. Although the words "not permitted" sounded simple, Gu Hai instantly inferred plenty of information from that. It seemed like he saw a huge opportunity, one that sent a ripple through his calm heart. Gu Hai suppressed that ripple and took a sip of tea. Chen Tianshan said sullenly that there was already no hope for the Chen nation and that he was just there to give it a try. He added that if Gu Hai could not help, then never mind. Gu Hai did not speak, just looked at Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi. After a while, Gu Hai said gravely that he could save the Chen nation but had a condition. Chen Tianshan revealed a shocked expression and asked how. Guhai said gravely that he had a condition but did not explain further. Chen Tianshan looked straight at Guhai. Chen Liangyi said with pleasant surprise that he could give Guhai anything he wanted. Guhai ignored Chen Liangyi and instead stared at Chen Tianshan. He said that he wanted the Clear River Sect's sect master to infuse energy into him to assist him in breaking through the barrier of the acquired realm and reaching the innate realm with everything he had. Guhai also wanted to learn the innate realm cultivation technique of the Clear River Sect. Chen Tianshan stood up in surprise, asking if Guhai had reached consummation of the acquired realm. Guhai nodded seriously. Chen Tianshan protested, saying it was impossible. He explained that he had checked Guhai's cultivation talent back then and that there was no way Guhai could cultivate internal energy. Chen Tianshan noted that Guhai had only started cultivating after the age of 30, and with such poor cultivation talent could only rely on physical training. Chen Tianshan said it would be impossible for Guhai to surpass the acquired realm's 5th layer, and that now Guhai claimed to have reached the peak of the acquired realm's 10th layer, which was absolutely impossible. Guhai replied that others could not rely on physical training, but that did not mean he could not. He explained that while in the acquired realm, one possessed a lifespan of only 100 years, but when one reached the innate realm, one's lifespan would reach 200 years. Guhai said he had already set his prime and that if he did not break through to the innate realm, his physical training would deteriorate. Fortunately, he had reached the consummation of the acquired realm. Guhai noted that Chen Tianshan was only in the Golden Core realm and that was not enough. Only the sect master could do it. Guhai asked Chen Tianshan to tell the sect master about this and said that as long as he agreed to the condition, Guhai would save the Chen nation. Chen Tianshan stared at Guhai, his eyes flickering with bewilderment. He thought physical training was ridiculous and questioned whether one could reach the consummation of the acquired realm through such a coercive method of cultivation that required torturing oneself. Chen Tianshan believed that even exhausting one's potential could not surpass the acquired realm's 5th layer, and that no one had ever done it, yet Guhai had managed to reach the consummation of the acquired. Guhai said he had only this one request and asked what Chen Tianshan thought. Chen Tianshan said sullenly to save the Chen nation first, and that he would tell the sect master about it. Guhai merely smiled faintly and shook his head. He did not say anything, only looked at Chen Tianshan. Chen Tianshan insisted that the sect master was not there and that he could not agree on his behalf. He repeated that Guhai should save the Chen nation first, and that he would report it to the sect master. Guhai said in a determined tone that it would take Gao Xianji's army at least half a month to reach Hulao SS. He added that half a month was sufficient for Chen Tianshan to return to his sect and come back. Guhai said that as long as Chen Tianshan could obtain a promise from the Clear River Sect's sect master, Guhai would immediately save the Chen nation. Guhai noted that it would not be too late to fulfill the promise after saving the Chen nation, but that he required a decree from the sect master to that effect first. Chen Tianshan argued unhappily with a frown, stating that many things could happen in half a month and questioning how the Chen nation could be saved if Hulao Pass fell within that time. He also pointed out that the Song nation's ferocious army would arrive half a month later and doubted how 100,000 inexperienced soldiers could defend against them. He frowned deeply as he spoke. Guhai countered adamantly, assuring that half a month was not enough time for Hulao Pass to fall and that defending it was his problem. He insisted that the earlier Chen Tianshan returned, the sooner the Chen nation could resolve its danger. He refused to take the risk without a promise. Chen Tianshan stared coldly at Guhai and reminded him that he had promised to save the Chen nation, warning that there would be consequences if he failed. His gaze was sharp and unyielding. Guhai showed no concern and instead turned his head to look at Chen Liangyi. He explained that since Chen Taiji had died, the past should be forgotten. Although he was currently in the Chen nation, he paid vast taxes every year and was not under its protection. He could move to any of the other 5 nations if he wished, but he stayed due to memories and reluctance to leave. He had no grudge or debt toward them, but insisted that they wait for news from Immortal Venerate Chen before proceeding. Chen Liangyi immediately expressed respectful thanks to Guhai. His tone was earnest and grateful. Guhai told Chen Liangyi to return first, mentioning that he had many guests and would not entertain them further. He was dismissive but polite. Chen Liangyi nodded in agreement and prepared to leave. His demeanor was obedient. Chen Tianshan stared at Guhai a moment longer before declaring that he would return to his sect to have the sect master issue a decree. He hoped Guhai was truthful, ending with a warning. Then he turned and left quickly with Chen Liangyi. Gu Qin, standing nearby, looked at Guhai with a slight frown and expressed doubt about saving the Chen nation this time. He questioned how Guhai planned to do it and hinted at a possible solution. Guhai turned to the go board on the table and took a deep breath before replying that he knew the situation was almost unresolvable. He explained that the sects were not allowed to interfere and that the battle had to be equal between the two nations. He acknowledged it was a fierce battle between two weak parties, but insisted it was his last chance. The difference between the acquired realm and the innate realm was only one realm, but it was overwhelming. Entering the innate realm would allow him to regain his youth and prime, and he needed this opportunity no matter how difficult. Guhin nodded somewhat worriedly in response. His concern was evident. Guhai instructed Guhin to think about countermeasures and not to disturb him for now, telling him to withdraw. His tone was firm. Guhin reminded Guhai that it was his birthday and asked if he wanted anything. His voice was tentative. Guhai declined, saying he had already received the best birthday gift, and waved his hand dismissively. He showed no interest in celebration. Guhin nodded and withdrew quietly. His expression was respectful. Guhai sat by the window, watching the soldiers below leave. He fiddled with a black go stone and frowned heavily. He reflected on collecting 100,000 go puzzles on his 30th birthday, and finding the black go stone in a bookstore basement. He marveled at how unexpectedly he had been brought to this world from Earth, and how 40. He wondered what secrets the stone held, suspecting it was more than just puzzles. After decades of study, he was almost done, but puzzled by the lack of movement in recent years. He questioned how he was supposed to comprehend it. Guhai sighed softly and pressed the black go stone to his forehead. Strangely, the black go stone moved through his skin and entered his forehead. Guhai sank his consciousness inside, discovering a space beneath his forehead filled with 100,000 go boards. Each board displayed a puzzle, and the pieces continuously changed positions. The black go stone hovered above them like a sovereign overseeing the puzzles. At the Clear River sect, located amid a cluster of mountains outside the Chen nation, 20-odd people stood within a large hall clearly divided into 3 factions. The group on the left wore azure shirts and frowned heavily as they looked at a large map in the hall's center. Their leader, an azure-clad middle-aged man, showed anger in his eyes. The group on the right wore white clothes and appeared extremely happy. Their leader, another middle-aged man, laughed and mocked the Clear River sect master, claiming the Chen nation had lost 3 passes and could not last a strike. The white-clad group laughed along with their leader. The azure-clad group glared at the white-clad faction. The Clear River sect master clenched his fist tightly and insisted it was not over until the end, questioning if the Chen. The white-clad First Song sect master sneered, pointing out the military forces on the map. He noted that the Song nation was united and strong, that Gao Xianji had killed 600,000 Chen nation soldiers, leaving only 100,000 at Hulao Pass under an ordinary general's command, making the outcome predictable. He advised surrender. The Clear River sect master glared in response. Despite the obvious impending defeat of the Chen nation, the Clear River sect master refused to resign himself to loss. It was not just about losing a mundane nation, but about the impression left before an important person at the center. That person had been following the war and would see them as incompetent, causing frustration. While the 2 sect masters bickered, they paid attention to 5 people in the center. Although it was the Clear River sect, these 5 occupied the central northern position reserved for the host. The leader of the 5 was a black-clad young woman dressed like a man. She had long, slender legs that were firm and elegant, a curvy figure, and a long, snow-white neck. Her black clothes contrasted sharply with her appearance, making her stand out and inspiring desire. Her male hairstyle was offset by earlocks that gave her mature beauty. Her attire could not hide her beauty and made her more enticing. The disciples of the 2 sects coveted the young woman but suppressed their emotions, understanding her identity. The young woman held a folding fan and looked at the large map marked with details of the war between the Song nation and the Chen nation. 4 people stood behind her. 3 showed no expression and appeared to be guards. The 4th was a bald monk in moon-white robes, exuding an air of transcendence. His face was elegant and handsome. Holding a string of 18 small prayer beads, he studied the map alongside the young woman. The young woman asked Venerable Liu Nian for his opinion with a smile, slapping her folding fan on her other. Venerable Liu Nian responded by noting that the young woman had created such a massacre to see a war of the mundane world, resulting in 600,000 soldiers' deaths. He ended by reciting Amitabha, expressing sorrow. The young woman rebuffed him, saying she had heard he had killed many more before becoming a monk, and that she did not start the massacre. They had done it themselves. She admitted causing it, but denied responsibility. Venerable Liu Nian smiled bitterly and said the past had faded like smoke. The young woman recalled that her grandfather once advised her to observe a mundane war when given the chance, noting that although such wars were not strong, they occasionally displayed boundless wisdom. She smiled as she found this war truly interesting and sought Venerable Liu Nian's opinion. He looked at the map and nodded, acknowledging that Chen Taiji was a capable general who controlled the large military campaign with firm and steady progress. Venerable Liu Nian explained that initially, the Chen nation seemed poised for an overwhelming victory over the Song nation until Gao Xianji unexpectedly appeared on the Song side. The young woman agreed, affirming that Gao Xianji was indeed incredible. Venerable Liu Nian described Gao Xianji as the divine strategist of the Song nation, surpassing Chen Taiji in troop leadership by employing tactics that led to victory. He recounted how Gao Xianji orchestrated numerous schemes within months, using the army in a godlike manner and taking risks that resulted in a significant defeat for. The strategist's psychological battle tactics culminated in a feint in the east and a sudden attack in the west, capturing 3 passes at once. The young woman found Gao Xianji somewhat interesting and inquired about his level. Venerable Liu Nian smiled and suggested that the young woman likely already had an idea, questioning why she asked him. The young woman solemnly praised Gao Xianji's ability to command troops as if he were an expert fighter despite lacking many personal skills, marking him as a superior general. Venerable Liu Nian nodded in agreement. The young woman expressed satisfaction at having gained something from the trip, at least meeting a talent. However, the first Song sect master raised his eyebrows in response to her praise. He anxiously protested that Gao Xianji was only an ordinary person at the acquired realm. The young woman looked at him indifferently and reassured him that Gao Xianji would not count among his slots. Joy immediately appeared on the first Song sect master's face as he acknowledged the young woman's wisdom. The young woman focused on talent rather than cultivation, reasoning that cultivation could be increased slowly, but intellect and wisdom had limited improvement, and she could not let such a talent slip away. She then asked Venerable Liu Nian if the Chen nation could still counterattack as she studied the map. Venerable Liu Nian remained silent for a moment before shaking his head, explaining that without assistance from a sect or another nation, the Chen nation was at its end. With 3 passes fallen, only the plains remained, and the Song nation, united and with several 100,000 soldiers, would gather at Hulao Pass. Although the Chen nation had 100,000 soldiers there, they were inexperienced and unlikely to resist or avoid surrender. Furthermore, Chen Taiji had sustained severe heart vessel injuries, leaving him with will but no strength. In half a month, Gao Xianji would lead his troops over, and the Chen nation would be finished. Upon hearing this conclusion, the first Song sect master appeared joyful, but the Clear River sect master looked very sullen. The young woman nodded in agreement, acknowledging that the Chen nation had no way out of the desperate situation. Suddenly, an anxious cry came from outside the hall, and Chen Tianshan rushed in from the Gu residence. The Clear River sect master's expression darkened further upon seeing Chen Tianshan, as he had sent him secretly to aid the Chen nation, yet they had still lost. Chen Tianshan was startled to see the first Song sect's group and the prominent personage present. He saluted respectfully to the young woman, who nodded but ignored him. The Clear River sect master sullenly asked about Chen Taiji's condition, and Chen Tianshan bitterly revealed that Chen Taiji had died of shattered heart vessels half a month ago. The Clear River sect master's face sank deeply. The first Song sect master laughed loudly, declaring that with Chen Taiji dead, the Chen nation was beyond saving and advising the Clear River sect master to concede. The Clear River sect master's expression became extremely unsightly. The black-clad young woman frowned slightly, having earlier thought Chen Taiji could not save the situation, and now with his death, the war was surely concluded. The Clear River sect master bowed slightly to the young woman, admitting that his sect had embarrassed itself. There was no hope left. Before the young woman could respond, Chen Tianshan interjected anxiously, insisting that they had not lost yet and that there was still a chance to turn things around. The first Song sect master laughed in disbelief at Chen Tianshan's words, while the Clear River sect master shouted at him to be quiet, lamenting their embarrassment. Chen Tianshan persisted, stating that he had come because of this matter and that victory was still possible. The young woman appeared somewhat curious. It was clear that the Chen nation was finished, so she wondered if this sudden claim was mere sensationalism. The Clear River sect master coldly demanded that Chen Tianshan explain how the Chen nation could win, skeptical that such a turnaround was possible given their depleted core forces. Chen Tianshan braced himself and revealed that before Chen Taiji's death, he had recommended a person who could save the desperate situation, much like Gao Xianji had done for the Song nation. The young woman showed interest, asking if it could really be the same. The Clear River sect master doubted it, pointing out that the Song nation's core strength was intact when Gao Xianji appeared, whereas the Chen nation was on the verge of destruction. He questioned how victory could be achieved without resources, expressing disbelief. The young woman smiled faintly and asked who this person was. The Clear River sect master did not stop Chen Tianshan from answering, but continued to glare at him. Chen Tianshan, feeling tortured, stated that Chen Taiji had recommended this person with absolute certainty, and that he had sought him out with Crown Prince. The person was called Gu Hai, whom many senior and junior brothers had met before. The first Song Sect members immediately reacted, recognizing the name. Chen Tianshan was surprised that even the first Song Sect knew Gu Hai. The young woman inquired if Gu Hai was willing to help the Chen nation. Upon her question, everyone fell silent. Chen Tianshan smiled bitterly. He explained that Gu Hai had offered to help the Chen nation win, but on one condition. The sect master must agree to assist him in breaking through into the innate realm from the consummation of the acquired realm after saving. Chen Tianshan added that Gu Hai also wanted permission to practice the Clear River sect's innate realm cultivation technique. He was startled to hear that Gu Hai had reached the consummation of the acquired realm. The young woman looked at Chen Tianshan with some confusion. Chen Tianshan elaborated that Gu Hai had been unknown until 40 years ago when he suddenly appeared without any cultivation background and poor talent. He began cultivating at 30 but could not cultivate inner energy, choosing physical training instead. Chen Tianshan noted that Gu Hai trained very hard, built a huge business empire, became the wealthiest man of the Six Nations, and surprisingly reached the consummation of the acquired realm. Venerable Liu Nian expressed shock that Gu Hai had reached the consummation of the acquired realm through physical training. He confirmed that it was extremely rare and that this was only the second time he had heard of such a case. The young woman asked who had been the first to achieve this. Venerable Liu Nian replied that it was her maternal grandfather. The young woman's pupils constricted as she turned solemn. Chen Tianshan informed the sect master that Gu Hai required a decree promising his request in order to help the Chen nation turn the desperate situation around. The first Song sect master dismissed the idea as delusional, refusing to believe that an acquired realm old man could save the situation. The Clear River sect master, however, looked at the young woman and noticed her curiosity, which lifted his disappointed heart. He decided to agree to Gu Hai's request, accepting the risk of embarrassment. Chen Tianshan expressed excitement and gratitude. The young woman tapped her other hand with her folding fan and suggested watching a little more. Venerable Liu Nian warned that time might be short. She smiled and said she wanted to see why Gu Hai dared to make such a claim. Venerable Liu Nian frowned but agreed with a bitter smile. At the isolated Tian residence in Song City, the capital of the Song Nation, the main hall remained brightly lit late into the night. Only 2 people were present. Gu Hai, who had recently been at the Gu residence, and a yellow-robed man about 30 years old with a squarish face, thick eyebrows, and spirited. Gu Hai appeared dust-covered as if rushed from afar, but his snow-white hair was now black without a single white strand. The yellow-robed man, Gu Han, smiled and handed Gu Hai a hot hand towel. Gu Hai accepted the towel, wiped his face and hands, and returned it. He admitted that he had aged and that in a few years he would no longer be able to run like that. He emphasized that nothing could go wrong this time. Gu Han brewed a cup of tea and respectfully handed it to Gu Hai. He asked if the Clear River sect master had agreed. Gu Hai nodded, affirming that otherwise he would not be there. Gu Han expressed excitement that if Gu Hai could break through to the innate realm, the Gu clan could flourish for another century, and no one could stop him. Gu Hai smiled and said he had watched the brothers grow up, and that their cultivation talents were excellent, so they could enter immortal sects eventually, even without him. Gu Han solemnly replied that he and first brother trusted in Gu Hai. Gu Hai then asked about the Song Nation, noting he had not been there in 10 years and inquiring about the war between the 2 nations. Gu Han nodded solemnly and explained that the Song Emperor had designated Gao Xianji as the Chen-Felling Supreme Commander with full military control, but the Crown Prince was appointed Vice Supreme Commander to monitor Gao Xianji without military. The Crown Prince had been in the Song Nation for 8 years, managing shops and businesses. Gu Han had changed his name to Tianhan and financially supported the Crown Prince, gaining his trust. Gu Hai's expression changed slightly upon hearing about the Crown Prince. He asked if Gu Han had collected information about the Song Nation's officials. Gu Han confirmed that he had organized the information into volumes. Gu Hai ordered him to bring all the information immediately to study how to use it to take down the nation. Gu Han worriedly asked if Gu Hai would rest after rushing there, but Gu Hai insisted that time would not wait and urged him to hurry. Gu Han agreed. Back at the Clear River sect's main hall, the Clear River sect master and the first Song sect master continued to accompany the young woman and Venerable Liu Nian as they looked at the map in. The young woman asked Venerable Liu Nian to predict the troop movements of the 2 nations. Venerable Liu Nian said that Gao Xianji's army was high in morale and would likely capture Hulao Pass quickly. He noted that the Chen nation's morale was declining after Emperor Chen's death, making it the best opportunity for the Song nation. He added that Gu Hai was just a merchant and that changing commanders before battle was unwise. Gao Xianji was brilliant and would likely rush elite troops to attack Hulao Pass immediately, leaving the Chen nation unable to resist and ending the war. The young woman expressed curiosity about Venerable Liu Nian's low opinion of Guhai. He replied that it was useless since it was already too late and Gao Xianji would not allow a counterattack. Suddenly, a loud cry announced a report from outside the hall. The young woman smiled, eager to see if Venerable Liu Nian's predictions were correct. A white-clad man entered the hall and greeted the sect master, hall master, and Clear River sect master respectfully. The first Song sect master asked if Gao Xiaoji's army had charged into Hulao Pass yet. The white-clad man shook his head and replied that they had not rushed to Hulao Pass but were slowly claiming the surrounding cities. Venerable Liu Nian paused for a moment. He observed the situation carefully. Venerable Liu Nian then considered the implications of the report. He remained thoughtful. Venerable Liu Nian's attention was fully captured by the unfolding events. He stayed silent for a moment. The first Song sect master asked while glaring. He demanded to know what was going on. The first Song sect master's expression was stern. He showed clear displeasure. The first Song sect master's tone was sharp. The white-clad man reported the intelligence he had gathered. He explained that he had been following Gao Xianji closely, obtaining first-hand information and sending it back immediately. The white-clad man described Gao Xianji's initial plan to reorganize his troops after taking the 3 passes, leaving 500,000 soldiers to claim surrounding cities and taking 300,000 to march on Hulao Pass. The white-clad man revealed that Gao Xianji suddenly stopped after receiving news that Guhai was aiding the Chen nation. The white-clad man's tone was serious. The Clear River sect master's eyes lit up upon hearing this. He showed a spark of interest. The Clear River sect master's demeanor changed noticeably. He appeared intrigued. The Clear River sect master's curiosity was piqued. The white-clad man nodded reluctantly in confirmation. He acknowledged the information. The white-clad man's expression was somewhat bitter. He seemed to regret the circumstances. The white-clad man's mood was subdued. The first Song sect master scowled and questioned the validity of the threat. He doubted that Guhai, an old man waiting for death, could instill fear in Gao Xianji. The first Song sect master's skepticism was evident. He found the idea absurd. The first Song sect master's disbelief was clear. The white-clad man explained bitterly that Gao Xianji had shown an intense reaction. He conveyed that Gao Xianji immediately wrote to the Song Emperor, instructing him to control all merchants tightly. The white-clad man detailed that the Song Emperor was to take control of shops selling food and herbs to prevent Guhai from using business means to cut off military supplies. The white-clad man's tone was grave. The first Song sect master demanded furiously how Guhai, an insignificant merchant, could affect the war situation. He questioned the influence over groceries and herb shops. The first Song sect master's anger was palpable. He found the notion ridiculous. The first Song sect master's frustration was clear. The white-clad man replied with a bitter smile that he had asked the same question. He confirmed that Gao Xianji insisted on Guhai's influence. The white-clad man's smile was tinged with irony. He seemed resigned. The white-clad man's acceptance was reluctant. The first Song sect master was left speechless. He had no immediate response. The first Song sect master's silence spoke volumes. He was taken aback. The first Song sect master's mind raced. The Clear River sect master laughed heartily, feeling delighted. He found amusement in the situation. The Clear River sect master's mood was lightened. He expressed joy openly. The Clear River sect master's laughter was genuine. Venerable Liu Nian and the young woman exchanged surprised looks. They shared mutual astonishment. Venerable Liu Nian's eyebrows raised. The young woman's eyes widened. Both were taken aback. The first Song sect master asked sullenly about the current situation. He sought reassurance. The first Song sect master's tone was subdued. He wanted clarity. The first Song sect master's concern was evident. The white-clad man replied that the situation was under control. He reported that the Song nation had sent sufficient supplies of food and herbs under heavy guard to the front lines to prevent. The white-clad man's voice was steady. He conveyed confidence. The white-clad man's information was reassuring. The first Song sect master questioned why Gao Xianji had not attacked yet if supplies were secure. He expressed impatience. The first Song sect master's inquiry was pointed. He sought explanation. The first Song sect master's frustration lingered. The white-clad man explained that Gao Xianji prioritized claiming surrounding cities to prevent counterattacks from the Chen nation. He detailed that Gao Xianji delayed the march to Hulao Pass to inspire fear by controlling 3/4 of the territory. The white-clad man described the psychological strategy. He conveyed Gao Xianji's belief that fear would lead to victory without fighting. The white-clad man's explanation was thorough. Venerable Liu Nian frowned and remarked on the psychological battle. He noted that the delay was too long. Venerable Liu Nian's concern was evident. He questioned the strategy's duration. Venerable Liu Nian's skepticism showed. The first Song sect master also spoke sullenly about the psychological battle. He questioned how long Gao Xianji would drag it out. The first Song sect master doubted Gao Xianji's courage. He wondered if Gao Xianji feared an old man who appeared suddenly. The first Song sect master's doubt was clear. The white-clad man smiled bitterly and said he had asked the same question. He revealed Gao Xianji's response. The white-clad man's smile was tinged with irony. He conveyed the answer reluctantly. The white-clad man's tone was somber. Venerable Liu Nian asked with curiosity what Gao Xianji had said. He sought to understand. Venerable Liu Nian's interest was genuine. He awaited the explanation. Venerable Liu Nian's demeanor was attentive. The white-clad man replied that Gao Xianji considered Gu Hai the best military strategist despite being a merchant. He conveyed the surprising evaluation. The white-clad man's tone was serious. He emphasized the point. The white-clad man's words carried weight. The Clear River sect master's eyes lit up suddenly. He was surprised by Gao Xianji's assessment. The Clear River sect master found the idea remarkable. He felt hope for the Chen nation. The Clear River sect master's expression brightened. He saw potential. The young woman's interest was piqued by the mention of the best military strategist. She showed curiosity. The young woman leaned in mentally. Her attention sharpened. The young woman's intrigue grew. The white-clad man laughed and explained that ordinary people's knowledge was limited to the 6 mundane nations. He cautioned not to take things at face value. The white-clad man's laughter was knowing. He implied deeper truths. The white-clad man's tone was instructive. The young woman demanded to know why Gao Xianji said Gu Hai was the best strategist. She questioned the contradiction between Gu Hai's pride and Gao Xianji's caution. The young woman's tone was sharp. She sought clarity. The young woman's skepticism was evident. The white-clad man confirmed that he had asked Gao Xianji and was told the truth. He revealed that Gu Hai had commanded an army in the past with startling results. The white-clad man's voice was steady. He conveyed important information. The white-clad man's revelation was significant. The young woman frowned and asked why there had been no previous reports about Gu Hai's military past. She recalled that Gu Hai was always known as a merchant. The young woman's confusion was clear. She sought explanation. The young woman's expression was puzzled. The white-clad man explained that the matter was a tightly guarded secret. He admitted they had not known before. The white-clad man said Gao Xianji knew because his father told him. He recounted that Gu Hai appeared 40 years ago at age 30 and befriended the late Chen emperor, Chen Taiji. The white-clad man described the Chen nation's precarious position among 8 mundane nations. He detailed Gu Hai's secret role as Chen Taiji's strategist, resolving danger swiftly and leading the army to strong momentum. The white-clad man's tone was informative. The young woman echoed in surprise that Gu Hai's army was undefeatable no matter where. She expressed astonishment. The young woman's reaction was strong. She absorbed the information. The young woman's eyes widened. The white-clad man confirmed that Gu Hai's army grew larger despite battles. He mentioned Gao Xianji's collection of military campaign records with names like Village Surrounding the City, Sparrow Battle, Tunnel Warfare, Besieging Enemies to Rescue Allies, and Borrowing the Allies' Resources to Attack the Enemy. The white-clad man admitted he did not understand the names, but noted Gao Xianji treasured the records. He explained that Gu Hai used these strategies to win many battles over 5 years without defeat. The white-clad man described how the Chen nation shifted from near destruction to strong momentum, eliminating one nation and alarming others. The white-clad man's narrative was detailed. Venerable Liu Nian's expression changed slightly as he processed that Gu Hai had brought a nation from destruction to victory, eliminated a nation, and faced an allied army of 6 nations. He showed concern. Venerable Liu Nian's thoughts deepened. He considered the scale of Gu Hai's achievements. The white-clad man affirmed that Gao Xianji said Gu Hai's command was legendary. He described how Gu Hai toyed with the 6 nations' allied army of 2 million, rendering them ineffective. The white-clad man recounted how the Chen nation pursued and destroyed another nation. The white-clad man's tone was admiring. The young woman echoed in shock that another nation was destroyed. She was taken aback. The young woman's surprise was evident. She absorbed the gravity of the statement. The white-clad man explained that Gu Hai's army was like a sea fed by all rivers, accepting anyone, even enemy troops, which strengthened the Chen nation. He recounted that Gao Xianji's father, a famous general in the allied army, accepted defeat after battling Gu Hai and retired. The white-clad man described Gu Hai's army as a drawn divine sword, destroying wherever it pointed. He noted that Gu Hai intended to conquer the remaining 5 nations, but was stopped by various sects. The white-clad man concluded that the 5 nations feared the Chen nation for decades. The white-clad man's tone was reverent. The Clear River sect master frowned slightly and recalled that the other sects had sought his intervention to stop Chen Taiji's fighting for sect benefits. He acknowledged that Gu Hai commanded the army secretly. The Clear River sect master's tone was reflective. He admitted his role. The young woman's eyes flashed brightly as she realized Gu Hai's incredible military command. She was impressed. The young woman's admiration was clear. She recognized Gu Hai's prowess. The white-clad man explained that Gao Xianji's father discovered Gu Hai's command by coincidence after retiring. He collected battle records and organized them into books, which Gao Xianji studied from childhood. The white-clad man said Gao Xianji knew how terrifying Gu Hai was and thus chose a stable method to take Hulao Pass. The white-clad man's explanation was comprehensive. Venerable Liu Nian asked with curiosity if Gu Hai had fought more than 100 battles undefeated in 5 years. He sought confirmation. Venerable Liu Nian's interest was keen. He wanted to understand the scale. The first Song sect master questioned the brevity of the 5 years in which so many battles were fought. He expressed amazement. The first Song sect master's tone was incredulous. Gao Xianji explained that Gu Hai could command several battles simultaneously. He had noted that in just 5 years, the Chen nation had risen from the brink of destruction to become the strongest among the 6 nations. Gao Xianji mentioned a conflict between Gu Hai and Chen Taiji, which led to Gu Hai withdrawing from politics and the military to become a merchant. He added that even as a merchant, Gu Hai became the wealthiest man among the 6 nations. Everyone in the large hall fell silent, finding the story unusually remarkable. In Song City, Song Nation, Gu Hai and Gu Han walked down a broad street, observing the people around them. Gu Han introduced the shop ahead as belonging to their own people with a smile. Gu Hai nodded and sighed, remarking that Song City had not changed much in recent years. Gu Han expressed confusion about why Gu Hai, once an undefeatable army commander who could quickly turn a defeated army into an unrivaled force, had chosen to have First Brother command Hulao Pass instead. Gu Hai shook his head and explained that Gao Xianji was formidable, and defeating him with 100,000 soldiers at Hulao Pass would take too long. He emphasized that what he lacked most now was time. Gu Han asked how long Gu Hai would need to defeat the Song Nation's army if he commanded the soldiers at Hulao Pass. Gu Hai answered 1 year. Gu Han questioned whether that was long, and Gu Hai replied that he did not fear any opponent in commanding troops, as victory was only a matter. He noted that since the Clear River sect master had agreed to his demand so readily, a very important person must be watching the war, allowing it to continue without interference like a game. Gu Hai worried that if he took too long, that person might lose patience and leave, jeopardizing the Clear River sect's promise. Gu Han was shocked, asking if the Clear River sect master had not already issued a decree making the promise. Gu Hai scoffed disdainfully at the thought. Gu Han acknowledged that such promises were only honored when one held equal strength or status. Otherwise, they were mere jokes. He admitted that the Clear River sect master might or might not honor the promise. Gu Hai nodded, explaining that he was currently borrowing the prestige of that important person and needed to complete everything before that person left to redeem the promise. Gu Han felt pressured by this revelation. Gu Han then expressed concern about the high morale of the Song Nation's army, noting the unity among the sovereign, officials, people, and military, describing them as an unstoppable force. He asked if Gu Hai had devised any strategy after reviewing the information over the past 2 days. Gu Hai replied that since the sovereign was united with his officials, they would drive a wedge between them. Since the officials were united with the people, they would separate them. And since the people were united with the military, they would divide them as well. Gu Han's eyes lit up, asking what Gu Hai planned to do. Gu Hai revealed his general plan, calling it the Song Extermination Plan. He intended to separate the united sovereign, officials, people, and military, destroying them one by sowing chaos in their hearts, which would naturally cause the Song Nation to crumble. Gu Han asked how Gu Hai would execute the plan, feeling somewhat excited. He recalled Gu Hai's incredible abilities throughout his childhood and anticipated a series of inconceivable stratagems. Gu Hai explained that he had formulated most of the plan en route to the Song Nation and had spent the last 2 days finalizing crucial details based on the information Gu Han had collected about various nobles and officials. He said they only lacked an opportunity and a candidate to manipulate. Gu Hai instructed Gu Han to organize a gathering the next day and invite selected people to the Tian residence for a banquet to observe them carefully. Gu Han agreed enthusiastically. As they chatted while walking down the street, startled cries suddenly arose from a distance. People shouted to clear the way as 20 riders on horses galloped through the street. All riders wore embroidered clothes. A man who had been slow to flee had his leg crushed by a horse, causing him to scream in pain. The horses continued rushing forward without slowing. The leader of the group was a youth with a foreboding air and cold eyes, as if he had just encountered something unpleasant. Guhan explained that this was Song Zhengxi, the crown heir and son of the crown prince, included in the information he had given Guhai. He described Song Zhengxi as arrogant, considered a scum of Song City, young but cruel and fierce, having harmed many female commoners. Guhai narrowed his eyes upon hearing that the youth was Song Zhengxi. The crown heir barreled through the street, brandishing his whip as he rode. His black horse knocked a man into the air, and Guhan caught the person. Song Zhengxi snorted coldly upon noticing this, but did not stop, continuing to gallop with his guards close behind, leaving chaos and injury in their wake. After Song Zhengxi and his group left, the sounds of crying remained on the street. They had injured at least 8 people. One of the injured expressed gratitude, and Guhan advised him to visit the herb shop for a doctor to ensure his bones were not broken. The man suspected his bones were indeed broken and thanked them before leaving. Guhan looked at Guhai, who was staring in the direction Song Zhengxi had taken. Guhai frowned slightly and remarked on the heavy stench of blood. He noticed blood staining the corner of Song Zhengxi's clothes and his guard's clothes, along with signs of cauterized wounds. Guhai ordered people to investigate the source of the blood immediately. Guhan responded affirmatively. 4 hours later, Guhan and Guhai arrived at a small, remote village outside Song City. Their faces darkened as they observed the scene. They saw about 10 families had lived there, with one house slightly larger than the others. All the houses were in ruins, having been burned down by fire. The larger house bore a charred signboard with the barely legible words, Lin Residence. Guhan ordered the 7 or 8 guards accompanying them to search for survivors among the rubble. The guards rushed forward and soon began carrying out charred corpses. The guards reported that there was no soot in the mouths of the victims, indicating that someone had killed them before burning their bodies. He then shouted that there was a survivor. The clan members immediately went over to the scene. A man completely covered in soot stirred in the rubble of the Lin residence. Guhan exclaimed in shock that the man had actually survived despite his heart being stabbed by a sword. Guhai explained that the person's heart was on the right side, so he had managed to survive by luck. The guards quickly cleared the soot from the man's mouth and nose and fed him some water. The man coughed weakly before opening his eyes and looking around in confusion, seeing only rubble. He started frantically searching the rubble, calling out for his elder sister. Guhan sighed softly and said that all the corpses were outside. The man ran out and searched around before stopping at a soot-covered female corpse. Someone had dealt a heavy blow to the woman's head, and there was a bloody hole in her body. She had died of excessive blood loss. Her clothes appeared messy. The man kept shaking the woman's corpse, calling out to her not to die, but she had long since stopped breathing. He wailed painfully as he hugged the woman's corpse. Guhan explained that they had already investigated the place before. It was the house of Lin Chong, the strongest vanguard under Gao Xianji. He said that the woman was Xiao Die, Lin Chong's wife, and that the two were deeply in love. However, Song Zhengxi had lusted after Xiao Di for a long time, and perhaps decided to take advantage of Lin Chong's absence from home. Guhai asked gravely if Lin Chong was the strongest vanguard under Gao Xianji while looking at the man in pain. Guhan said that this was how it was for many with power and authority, and that this was not the only tragedy, or the only time for the crown heir. He added that the authorities suppressed the news of these incidents because of their noble status, and that officials would soon come to cover up the matter. Guhai frowned heavily and ordered the cancellation of the next day's gathering, saying there was no need to search for another person. Since they had run into him, Song Zhengxi was the one who had to pay for his sins eventually. Guhan appeared excited and asked if Guhai was going to use Song Zhengxi to start the plan and if he wanted him dead. Guhai said no, that he wanted him alive, with a hint of coldness flashing in his eyes. One day later, at a small manor outside Song City, Guhai directed a group of servants tying letters to a large number of messenger pigeons. Guhan stood in front of Guhai, holding a stack of papers with the topmost piece bearing the words Song Extermination Plan in large letters. Guhan said that the younger brother of Xiao Di had followed their caravan to the front lines and should reach Lin Chong soon. Guhai said that one Xiao Di was far from enough and that they needed to collect evidence. He added that if there were none, they would fabricate some and that no one should be harmed but only made to vanish for a while, to be released after the war was over. Guhan reassured him not to worry and shared news from the front lines that Gao Xianji had stopped his troops from advancing upon hearing that Guhai had taken command of Hulao Pass. Guhai said that Gao Xianji was a genius at commanding troops and not someone unwilling to take risks, calling that news fake. He guessed that Gao Xianji had not just stopped his troops but also silently led a group of elite soldiers to Hulao Pass. Guhan expressed shock. Guhai said that Gukin should be able to hold out for a while, but that they needed to use this time to cripple Gao Xianji's 800,000-strong army. Guhan said he had looked at the first step of Guhai's Song Extermination Plan, discouraging the military with respect flashing in his eyes. Guhai ordered the release of the messenger pigeons to let the extermination of the Song Nation begin. The pigeon cages opened, and a large number of pigeons soared into the air, flying north. At Hulao Pass, the sound of a gong signaling a retreat rang out. The city gate tower stood between two precipitous cliffs, surrounded by corpses, countless arrows, and rising smoke. Large numbers of scaling ladders were on fire at the sides of the city gate tower. Gu Qin, with his hair dyed white, stood at the top of the tower looking down at the retreating legion of Song Nation soldiers. Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi stood behind him. Chen Tianshan said that the situation had been dangerous and that they had previously received news that Gao Xianzhi had stopped the army upon hearing about Guhai, but that had been a feint. He said Gao Xianzhi had come faster than expected with elite troops, and that if not for Gu Qin's early preparations, Hulao Pass would have fallen. Chen Liangyi nodded and said that the burning tar had been crucial in burning the ladders, preventing dire consequences. He described the enemy soldiers as ferocious, equal to 5 of their soldiers each once they climbed up, and stammered with trepidation. Gu Qin did not look at them, but instead looked into the distance and said that they should never let it slip that he was Guhai now. Gu Qin's drastic change in appearance, with white hair and many wrinkles, made him unrecognizable to most people. Few had seen Guhai, or Gu Qin, in recent years, so the members of the Gu residence could not give him away. Chen Tianshan and Chen Liangyi nodded thoughtfully. Chen Tianshan had been reluctant about the arrangement, but no longer felt resentment, acknowledging that Guhai had anticipated the opponent's move. The attack had lasted only 10 hours, and they had repulsed Gao Xianzhi, forcing him to retreat without results. Chen Liangyi said he would listen to Gu Qin and do whatever was necessary to block Gao Xianzhi. Gu Qin reminded them not to leak his current movements to avoid accidents. Chen Tianshan promised to keep it a secret, but expressed concern that only 3,000 men had died in the earlier attack, a small portion of Gao Xianzhi's army, and asked how Gu Qin planned to defend against the large, endless army. Gu Qin replied after some silence that he believed in Guhai, and that he would restrain them soon. Chen Liangyi expressed surprise. Gu Qin said that the one who attacked earlier was Lin Chong, Gao Xianzhi's vanguard general and a high-ranking military officer who was very ferocious. He said they needed to pay attention to him and that after they returned, he would draw Lin Chong's appearance and hand the portrait to all soldiers on the city walls, instructing them to attack him with everything if they saw him. Chen Liangyi agreed. In a large tent within a camp outside Hulao Pass, a red-clad scholarly man about 40 years old held a cup of hot tea while carefully studying a huge sand table, replicating the terrain outside Hulao Pass. A group of bodyguards stood quietly beside him, and no one dared to interrupt the scholarly man holding the teacup. The man looked handsome and exuded an indescribable heroic spirit that inspired surprise with a glance. After taking a sip of tea, he used his hand to draw on the sand table. Suddenly, a blood-covered, imposing man rushed into the tent and fell to his knees, appearing ashamed and guilty. The scholarly man continued looking at the sand table with his back to the imposing man. The imposing man knelt and pleaded his guilt before the commander, admitting that Lin Chong was incapable and that he had failed to conquer Hulao Pass. He explained that the commander of Hulao Pass had anticipated their arrival and prepared burning tar, resulting in heavy losses and severe injuries, with 3,000 soldiers dead and 2,000 wounded. He begged the commander to punish him for causing such a huge loss. He did not turn around but continued to look at the sand table while holding a teacup. The imposing Lin Chong kowtowed again, pleading guilty for failing to conquer the city gate tower. The commander holding the teacup responded indifferently that it was normal to fail to conquer the city gate tower, and that success in one go would be odd. Lin Chong looked at the commander in confusion. The Chen-Felling Supreme Commander, Gao Xianzhi, turned around slowly while holding his teacup and smiled faintly as he addressed Lin Chong. Gao Xianzhi explained that he did not expect Lin Chong to take Hulao Pass in one attempt, but only wanted the vanguard to test it, assuring him that he need not blame himself because Lin Chong asked in shock if the commander did not blame him. Gao Xianzhi nodded after taking a sip of tea and revealed that he had sent people to investigate the terrain around Hulao Pass, praising Guhai for his flawless defenses and the precaution of destroying the cliff at the steep entry to cut off passage. Lin Chong continued with an unsightly expression, lamenting the loss of their 3,000 brothers. Gao Xianzhi interrupted firmly, stating that death and injuries were natural in war, and emphasizing that Guhai was a different and extremely strong opponent who should never be underestimated, even stronger than himself. Lin Chong expressed disbelief, claiming to admire only Gao Xianzhi in the entire Song Nation. Gao Xianzhi countered that he admired only Guhai in the entire world. Lin Chong exclaimed in shock. Gao Xianzhi stated gravely that despite his admiration, he still had to defeat Guhai, and warned everyone to be careful. Lin Chong responded affirmatively. Gao Xianzhi warned that Guhai used his soldiers in unpredictable ways and had many undiscoverable means, instructing that anything strange should be reported to him, even if it did not happen on the battlefield. Lin Chong agreed. Gao Xianzi ordered continuous attacks for 3 days, stating that even if a troop died, it did not matter because the defenders would also suffer losses, and he declared that after 3 days, they would withdraw and return with an overwhelming army to crush the defenders through fear. Lin Chong responded with determination. 3 days later, at the top of the city gate tower of Hulao Pass, Chen Liangyi's eyes turned wet as he observed the enemy's retreat. Chen Tianshan expressed concern over the loss of 10,000 men in the past 3 days, noting that their total force was only 100,000 and that the enemy still had an overwhelming 700,000 soldiers. Guqin smiled faintly and asked if they were worried about the soldiers becoming restless. Chen Liangyi responded worriedly, questioning if the soldiers would become restless. Guqin affirmed confidently. Chen Liangyi expressed surprise. Guqin explained that Gao Xianzhi had learned psychological warfare from his adoptive father, and that since Gao Xianzhi knew about it, his father must know as well. He reassured them not to worry and promised to announce the situation differently so that the death of 10,000 would make the soldiers more ferocious instead of scared, inspiring them to fight to the death without fear. Chen Liangyi expressed surprise again. Gao Xianzhi rode a large black horse, leading 10,000 injured and sick soldiers as he slowly headed toward a large city not far away. Although he had failed to capture Hulao Pass, Gao Xianzhi was satisfied because he had planted a seed of fear in the hearts of the remaining Chen Nation army there. He believed that while the deaths of 10,000 might make the soldiers more ferocious, when his 800,000 soldiers marched on Hulao Pass in the future, the seed of fear would sprout rapidly and crush the defenders' ferocity. Ahead lay the largest stronghold of the 800,000-strong army. Previously the Chen Nation's largest city aside from their capital, called Merchant City, where the richest man of the 6 nations had started. Gao Xianzhi had already captured it and used it as his stronghold to command and deploy his troops. Soldiers came from afar to receive Gao Xianzhi, announcing the commander's return. Gao Xianzhi inquired if any merchants in Merchant City were behaving suspiciously. A young, high-ranked officer reported that there were none and that they had been ordered long ago to monitor merchants not only in. Gao Xianzhi nodded in approval. The army slowly entered the city, heading toward a massive military drill ground in the city center where at least 300,000 soldiers camped, excluding dispatched troops. While still some distance from the camp, Gao Xianzhi raised his eyebrows as the sound of firecrackers erupted from the military drill grounds, creating an incredibly noisy atmosphere. He frowned slightly and asked what was going on. The young officer smiled and explained that wealthy merchants of the Song Nation were there to encourage the soldiers. Gao Xianzhi's expression changed as he immediately thought of Gu Hai, the wealthiest person of the 6 nations. He urged his horse to gallop. Gao Xianzhi soon arrived at the camp where a group of people in embroidered clothes bowed respectfully to a middle-aged man in magnificent robes. The leader of the merchants, dressed in expensive embroidered robes, expressed humility and happiness at seeing the Song Nation grow stronger, explaining that the merchant association of their city had sent goods for the military to prevent Gu Hai from exploiting commerce. The middle-aged man in magnificent robes was the Song Nation's crown prince, who appeared satisfied as he stood before the wealthy merchants. Suddenly, a soldier shouted that the commander had returned, causing soldiers, the crown prince, wealthy merchants, and others to turn their heads. When Gao Xianzhi arrived on his large horse, a cold look appeared in his eyes as the firecrackers continued to ring nearby. Crown Prince Song greeted the commander with a smile. The wealthy merchants also greeted him excitedly. Gao Xianzhi asked coldly what was going on. Crown Prince Song explained that the Merchant Association of Peng City had heard about Gao Xianzhi's orders to monitor all granaries and herb warehouses to prevent Gu Hai from causing trouble through commerce and cutting off supplies. Therefore, the merchants had banded together to send large amounts of food and herbs to support the military and cooperate with the army. Gao Xianzhi appeared somewhat surprised, recalling that when he learned Gu Hai commanded the Chen Nation's army, his first reaction was to worry that Gu Hai would use his commerce ties to cut off supplies, so he had made preparations long ago. Unexpectedly, the Merchant Association of Peng City had been so self-aware. The leader of the wealthy merchant smiled embarrassedly. He congratulated Commander Gao Xianzhi on his string of victories, including the killing of the Chen Nation's emperor, and expressed excitement and admiration. He explained that they had brought essential military supplies as a congratulatory gift to show their sincerity and hoped the commander would accept. Gao Xianzhi just stared at the group of wealthy merchants. Due to his wary nature, he initially suspected that Gu Hai had sent them as spies, and that there was a plot. However, when he looked at the mountain of food and herbs nearby, it did not seem like Gu Hai's scheme, leaving him slightly confused. Anyhow, if these merchants were here to offer congratulations and resources, there was no need to reject them. Gao Xianzhi thanked everyone on behalf of the entire army, mentioning that he had been rushing all the way and was feeling fatigued. The group of wealthy merchants immediately smiled and agreed that it was natural. Crown Prince Song then smiled and told Gao Xianji to go and rest, saying he would handle the merchants.